I'll tell you this. When I do talk to Al, I never fully come away with an opinion that I could offer him. I've given you these last week on the show. Hey, Joel, why don't you try this instead? And then you went and did it, and it worked out. Diplomacy, right? I've never even come away with an opinion on what I could offer to help solve his problems. I never fully know. I think you made a really good point when you said, hey, Al, it doesn't sound like you got a problem with fighting. It sounds like you got a problem with your contract. I thought that was very helpful by you. But then he didn't quite take us all the way there and let us know if, that's exactly what it is. And I do this every 3 months. I just wasn't quite sure. And I also don't want to talk him off the ledge that he's on, because he's having a lot of success being this angry, pissed off, me against the world guy. So if I care about Al and his career, I don't want to talk him out of the thing that I think is what's really making him such a winner.
Yeah,
that chip on his shoulder's taken him a long way.
Well, it's also left him, he just said it. He said, we should have done this a year ago. I'd have more fights. No, Al is 100% upset because he's a smart guy. He understands the risk that it takes a fighter to go through. But my advice to him as a fan, as somebody that's lived on this earth for a while, is you're in the prime of your career. There's only a few guys out there in the world that can beat you. If they're not going to pay you, then go make them pay you. And that's run through 2 more cats, and then they got to pay you because somebody will. Stay mad. Is he going to fight as well as he does if they pay him a bunch of money? Who knows? But I tell you what, the fact that he could train, he's pissed off. He's been pissed off on this contract. The fact that he could train a real training camp after 2 years and go have the success he had against a great fighter, man, my hat's off to that guy.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with that. And, you can lose people real fast, too. For example, he had done an article, and I only read it, and it was yesterday, but he talked about, look, I got $50,000 for this and everything that he went through. Now, the disconnect there is the average person's going to read it and go, wait a minute, a guy's upset. He made $50,000 in a couple of minute
Go ahead
fight.
and chop that money up for everybody. I want you to do that because you can.
And that was what my point was going to be was, when Al puts that out there, hey, I got $50,000, people are going to look at that and go, good for you. That's incredible. The world is at your fingertip. What would you be complaining about? But MMA math and boxing math is the same way. He's going to end up with 30% of that. So he started to give you a little bit of a breakdown, but he didn't go into enough detail. But that's relevant for people to understand. So let's call it $100,000 so that the math just becomes simpler. Same example. Let's say he got $100,000. And he was to say, I'm not happy with this. He's not going to have people on his side. People are going to look at it and go, what are you talking about? What are you, ungrateful? Because he takes for granted, and other fighters do too when they make this statement, that people understand how that works. Well, a fighter is going to end up with 30%. So if you make $100,000, you're going to get $30,000. That's what your money is. And then you don't get to work again, until the end of the year. With those years add up, and again, people just don't go, that's a good living. Well, not when, to your point, Joel, there's only a window there. There's only a few years that's going to happen in your whole life. So this is the risk, and this is what a fighter like Al needs to take into consideration, and he does. This is why he went out and he's doing real estate and he's standing up for himself. But the disconnect where the viewer could hear that and say, well, what's the problem here? They don't understand. He's going to get 30%. But look, he's got his taxes right off the top. He's got 10% to a trainer, 10% to a manager. Well, I just represented 53% of his money right there. Then he's got his expenses, which he's touched on just slightly, of flying corners. And look, it costs money to do business. He's an independent contractor. It's going to cost him money. I don't expect people to be crying in their beer over this. I'm just trying to get everybody to understand that when he comes out and under my scenario of $100,000, he was going to leave with 30. So under his scenario of $50,000, well, you cut that in half, he's going to end up with 15. And he doesn't get to work again for a meaningful period of time. I just want to explain that to the listener so that disconnect of, hey, what's a guy unhappy about? Well, that's the real math. And so that becomes the trick. I don't get to operate my life within a $50,000 number. I get to operate it within a 15, which is what I end up with. I just want to make that point clear.
I'm with you 100%, and that's why when I made that point that the $15,000 in the New York real estate market is probably one house, and he's probably selling more than one house every 2 months. And so that's how he's looking at it. But he put himself in that position. He went through, and just getting your real estate license is hard enough, but then actually going out and selling house and earning commissions, that's a whole nother animal. So I'm glad he put himself in that position. I'd like to, again, I'm a fan. I want to see him fight. I want to see him fight. If they're not, I want you to pay Al. You're going to pay him anyway. So you might as well pay him now.
What did you think of the point I made about a heel versus a heel? What would you do with Al versus Nate Diaz? That'd be pretty fun.
You're wrong about that. Heel versus heel in MMA is everything.
Well, that's my point, though. Yeah. What would you do as a fan if you got that match? I mean, that would be
be
incredibly fun.
But let's talk about that for a second, because there's been some news out of Conor's camp that hey, let's have Ferguson fight Nate. No, man. Nate needs to sit and do what Nate's doing. Ride his bike, take his swim, do his runs, do his jiu-jitsu, go on his boat, and wait for the Conor fight.
Do you here's what my pushback would be, Joel, is there's no guarantee that fight's going to happen. There's never guarantees in this. The only time I can think where, hey, waiting would have been good was Holly versus Ronda 2. And the only reason that I'm comfortable in saying that is because Dana said it. Dana said, go ahead and wait. I'll make that fight. And I'll make that fight huge and a blockbuster, and I'll give you a cut, and here's what the terms are going to be, but you're going to have to wait for it. That was the only time that we knew waiting was going to pay off, because the boss said it was going to pay off. Everything else is a gamble. So if you're of the mind that Conor is somehow going to fight Nate again just because a trilogy makes sense, that is how it typically works, but now you're dealing with a totally different animal there that's got a totally different set of options. Well, so you can't wait on Conor. That's what I'm saying. You can't wait on Conor.
Yeah, but here's your other problem. Nate is a guy that was in Al's shoes for a long time, fighting for 12-12 or 26-26, and then he hit the lottery, beat Conor, hit it again, fought him again. So how are you going to tell a guy you paid $1 to $3 million, whatever the number was, hey, come on back, we're going to pay you $350,000? The Diaz brothers are crazy to begin with. Go ahead and make that sell.
Go ahead and make that make sense. Yeah, that's a tough connection there, and there is a reality to that where he's going to look at it and go, wait a minute, I'm willing to do the same thing. I'm just as big of a draw as I was before, so I want to get paid the same thing. There's a part of that psychologically makes sense. It's just in this sport, it also comes down to your dance partner. Your paycheck is directly related 9.9% of the time. 9.9 out of 10. It's directly related to who you're standing across from. And that's a tough concept also psychologically for guys to understand. It's like, yeah, you're going to go backwards, but this fight isn't as big as that fight was.
Yeah, I mean, and another thing is they might be arguing over nothing. Seriously, I mean, what he's making, let's say 50 a fight right now. Well, right now, you could pay that guy $150,000 and put him on a card in 6 weeks, or $200,000, whatever that number is. You see what I'm saying? Right now, he's hot. Go ahead, UFC Brain Trust. Go ahead. That guy's hot. Use his anger, use his energy, use all that, and go make it a win-win for everybody.
Hey, I get your point on that, and you are completely right in every regard but one. And it's one of the most important parts of this is if you've got a promoter, he's got to know he's got a team player. He has to. I can't go out and do it because your point, yes, Al is going to draw and sell, and particularly on the East Coast where they haven't even used him yet. The Buffalo and the New York cars, they haven't even used him there yet. He is going to earn his keep. However, to give him that opportunity, if you're the promoter, and you got to always play to a promoter's mindset, I got to know you're on board. And after I deal you this ace from the bottom of the deck, can I trust that then I can run that momentum that I'm going to build and I'm willing to spend and gamble on and make you part of? Can I roll that momentum into my next play, or am I just going to be deadlocked and gridlocked again, and is it going to be a headache? And that's something, again, from a psychological standpoint, that it's got to be taken into consideration. That piece has to be there. If I'm a promoter, I got to know I don't just get one play out of you. I got to have multiple, which is why I signed you to a multiple fight contract so that I could put a long-term strategy together. That is the business.
All right, I agree with what you're saying, but again, sometimes we get wrapped up in how big we think everything is. The reality is, Dana White picks up a phone and calls Al. Listen, there's not 10. I want you to give me 10 bad guys in the UFC right now. you won't be able to do it. Give me 5. You might get 5. Well, Al made himself a bad guy. And if anybody has learned anything over the Conor blow up and the Chael Sonnen who wrote the manual, it's the bad